Hello, good evening everyone. Welcome to the DTS Pro webinar tutorial. This should be roughly around a 15 to 20 minute session where we will run through the basics of the DTS Pro software. I shall be open to any questions. This is Dr. Neeraj S. Rohida, and I will be happy to take any questions either in the middle of the session or we can have a question answer session once the webinar is concluded. So before we move ahead, hope everybody has installed the latest version of the software, that is version 17.3. To just check what version you are on, you can check here on the help menu on top about DTS. You will see the version, that is 17.3. That is the latest version. So let us start by uploading a single extraoral image. Now, the image that we upload, we always keep on emphasizing on a couple of tips whenever we shoot photographs for simulation. Now, a photograph like this, where there is a good amount of gingival display, or you just want to do a motivational mock-up, a single extraoral image is pretty good. We need not go ahead with a retracted image. So as you can see, good amount of gingival visibility. The most important factor here, there has to be a little open mouth position. So never shoot a photograph with the teeth in bite. Always have a slight open mouth position. So a clinical tip here is to ask the patient to pronounce the letter A and then smile. I repeat, A and smile. The moment the patient pronounces A, you will automatically get this little interincisal gap. Even if you are shooting the retracted image, you can have a similar tip where you ask the patient to pronounce A and then shoot the image. Whether you use a mobile phone or a DSLR camera is absolutely up to your preference. As long as the image is clear, not pixelated on the screen, it doesn't matter what source of image is used. So as soon as we upload the image, the artificial intelligence that is built in the software will start the facial recognition process. We will just enter the patient's name here. Webinar 14.4. I will just use this as reference. This takes us to the next screen, which has automatically detected the smile line. A couple of controls which most of you are already familiar with is to zoom in or zoom out the image. You can use the center wheel of the mouse. The least we emphasize on the use of a mouse, the better. Simulations and functioning of DTS Pro software is very, very simple and quick with the use of a mouse. Avoid using the touchpad of the laptop. Mouse makes life much simpler. So you can use the center wheel of the mouse to zoom in or zoom out the image. And if you want to scroll the image, just press the center wheel of the mouse and move it up or down. So just center wheel of the mouse, zoom in, zoom out, press the center wheel of the mouse to scroll or pan the image. As you can see, the smile area is reasonably well selected here. You can further edit. Make sure all parts of the teeth are included inside the smile area. So you don't want a smile area which excludes the part of a tooth, for example. Make sure it completely covers all the parts of the tooth structure, right? There are help tips which are there on most of the screens. So just to emphasize here, if you want to delete a point, you right click over it. And if you want to add a point, you just left click in between two existing points. So I can move my control points here. If I want to add a point, I will just left click anywhere between two existing points. And if I want to remove a point, I will just right click over it, right? So that is the basic controls. We go on to the next step, which is midline detection. Again, the software has detected the interpupillar line and the midline. I am slightly refining the position of the midline. So I am done with these steps. So these are the two basic steps that are needed with any extraoral photograph. Now, the most used feature for a very quick motivational mock-up is the instant smiles. As the name suggests, this will give you a very quick motivational mock-up and can be used for most of your clinical situations such as orthodontics, full mouth cases, FMRs, multiple missing teeth, crowding teeth, aesthetic cases, of course. So the moment you are on the instant smile screen, you see these 2 points here, the green and the blue control points. You can move the new template by clicking and dragging these 2 control points. You cannot move the template by clicking anywhere else except on these 2 points. So I can just left click and drag. So what I'm just trying to do is I'm trying to get the best possible fit of the new template on the patient's underlying teeth. And how do I check that? You can just change the opacity of the template so that you can see the underlying teeth. There are 2 tabs here. One is the template opacity, which changes the transparency of the new template, and one is the background opacity, which will make the background black, right? So if you just want the upper teeth to be seen, you can remove the other background. Once you have, of course, you can use the facial midline and these canine lines as a reference to place the new template. Once you have fixed the position of a template, you can navigate through different smile templates which are present in the software. You can just click on the show all tab and you can straight away navigate to the template that you deem will suit the patient. You can add your own templates as well to the library, but the templates which are already provided in the software more or less work for most clinical situations. Don't worry too much about the shade because we can change the shade in the next step, that is in the preview section. So I now want to have a template which is showing me both upper and lower teeth. That is where I finalize the position of my new template. Looks pretty good to me. As you can see in this template, both the upper and lower teeth are present. That is why you do not have the separate background opacity bar. If the template has got only upper teeth, you can make the background black. But if you have a template which is showing both upper and lower teeth, then you will not have the separate background opacity bar here. We go to the preview section. Now on the preview, you can have a single image, which is a simulated image, or you can have a compare, side-by-side comparison, which will give you a before-after simulation. Just below the compare button, there is one more button called as adjust. Now this will help you adjust the shade as well as brightness of the new template. Here there are 3 buttons: the tooth shade, lip smoothness, and gum shade. First is the tooth shade. If I drag the whiteness bar towards the right, as you can see, the new template or the new teeth become whiter. And if I move it to the left, that is in a negative, they become slightly yellow. So you can use this to change the shade of the teeth in the template. You can increase or decrease the brightness depending upon the image brightness. These 2 bars are more than sufficient to match the shade. Second is lip smoothness. This is a feature which will make your simulations very realistic. As you can see here, there is a little sharpness between the new template and the lip. The moment I increase my lip smoothness, you see this blends in well and gives a very natural feel to the simulation. So always keep the lip smoothness slightly high. And gum texture, if you drag it to the right, it will make the gums a little orange. And if you drag it to the left, it will make them a little pink in hue. So that is all that you need to know. Of course, I always like to keep my template opacity slightly less so that it makes it look very natural and realistic. And play. So you can see this before after transition. That is all you need to do for your instant smiles or for your motivational mockup. So just a single extraoral image, do a very quick smile area selection, align the image and just do an instant simulation for your immediate patient motivational mockups. So even before the patient has left the office on day one, you can give them an idea or you can send them a motivational mockup. You can export them and share it through various media, right? So that's the instant smiles. Let us now go to the second screen, or rather the first screen, which is smile editing tools. If you want to work on single teeth, or if you want to carry out simulations for gum length, gum repositioning, crown lengthening, you can come on the smile editing tool screen. Two simple but very useful tools in routine day-to-day practice for simulations. The first tool is called as extend tool. As the name suggests, extend tool can be used to extend. So for example, you can see here I'm just left clicking and dragging. Left click, hold the left click and drag. You can control the size of the brush from the top here. I like to keep it approximately 1 tooth width. So I left click, hold the left click of the mouse and drag. Left click, hold and drag. So very simple tool to show gum repositioning. Sometimes there is a little gingival zenith mismatch, and simulations are a very easy way to show the patients the difference in the gum level that would happen post gum repositioning procedures. You can also use the extend tool to simulate some amount of enameloplasty or bonding. So if you have a slight incisal crack, a little incisal wear, you can use the extend tool to very simply show the patient the before after change, right? Let us go to the preview and see the change. Now here, let me just keep the single section on and play. So this becomes very easy for dentist and patient communication to make them understand simple procedures like enameloplasty or crown or gum repositioning. Let us come back. Now, there is one more tool here which is called as the selection and the transformation tool. So there are two selection tools. One is the rectangle and one is a freehand. With rectangle, you can just make a rectangular selection. So I'm just left clicking and dragging to make a rectangular selection. With a freehand, you can just draw the selection tool. But for most scenarios, a rectangle selection tool is more than sufficient. Now, for example, if I want to close that diastema, you can show patients multiple simulations. You can show them orthodontic diastema closure versus additive diastema closure. So how do we use the rectangular selection tool? I will just left click and drag to select the tooth. You can even change the rectangle. If you have made a mistake, if you want to deselect, click anywhere outside the selection and the rectangle will disappear and make a new selection. As you can see, the edge of my rectangle is in line with the edge of the tooth. That is the only criteria. So you don't want the rectangle that is ending here, for example, the mesial edge. You want the rectangle that generally is in line with the edge of the tooth. Once you have made the selection, just right click inside the selection. So I repeat, left click and drag to make the selection. Right click inside the selection and choose the first option, that is transform. Let me put the midline option on. What I will now just do is, you can see these black control points. I am just clicking and dragging my tooth so that it stretches. The same thing I will repeat on the other side as well. Make sure the edge of the tooth is in line with the rectangular selection. Right click inside the box, transform, and I will now drag this till the midline. As you can see, this tooth is slightly short, so I can even increase the length. That is it. Diastema closure done. You can even go ahead and close the other diastemata, or you can use the same tools for extrusions, intrusions, derotations. So if you want your lateral incisors to be slightly elongated or slightly shortened, you can use these tools as well. We re-emphasize the importance of having a little gap between the upper and lower teeth whenever you shoot the images so that you can easily carry out these simulations. Similarly, you can intrude, extrude. So this is a very easy to use and a handy tool whenever you want to depict some orthodontic movements, additive dentistry, crown teeth derotations, so on and so forth, right? So that's a before after preview for the patient to understand diastema closure with any form of additive dentistry. If you want to go back one step, you can just press the undo button here. It'll keep on going one step back. The shortcut is Control Z on the keyboard, Control Z. And if you want to come back to square one from where you started, you see this icon on the bottom right of the screen that is revert all. It will ask you, are you sure you want to revert all the changes? So this has come to square one from where we started. Now, if you want to depict the same diastema closure with orthodontics, many times you have patients with diastemata where they want to understand different treatment options, orthodontics versus additive dentistry. So this is a useful tool where you can show them both simulations using a single image. Now here, I am just left clicking and dragging to make the complete quadrant selection. As you can see, I have selected the entire quadrant of teeth. Right click, transform, and now instead of stretching or instead of expanding the center point here, what I'm doing is I will just use the arrow keys on my keyboard. There are arrow keys on your keyboard. I will just drag or I will just move the arrow keys so that the entire quadrant moves. I can do the same thing on the other side. Select the entire quadrant of teeth, right click, transform, and drag. I can even slightly bring it down with my mouse. You can also reposition with the mouse, but if you want to move it in a straight line, always advise you to use the arrow keys. So there it is. We have got two simulations for diastema closure, one with additive dentistry. I can even derotate this to a bit. I can do all these changes, and one with orthodontics. What is the difference? In orthodontics, the width of the teeth remains the same, whereas in additive dentistry, we have stretched the teeth so that the width increases. So here are two simulations. Becomes crystal clear for the patient to understand how the diastema closure is happening, right? So on the smile editing tools, two simple and easy to use tools. One is the extend tool for your crown lengthenings or reshaping of teeth, and rectangle selection tool for showing additive dentistry or orthodontic movements. I will just revert all the changes. You can also use these tools for simulating jaw movements, lip movements, which are there as tutorials available on the website. If there are any doubts on that, we shall take it up at the end of the webinar. Going on to the last part of the presentation, that is veneers. Now, this is typically when you would want to go into a little more detailed 2D planning. For those of you who are also using the DTS 3D software, you do the 2D designing using this part, and then you can share it with the 3D software and then add new shells on the patient's intraoral scan. That is a separate discussion, of course, but this is where the 2D planning comes into play. So let us see how to do the DSD or the 2D planning. On the veneer screen, you can select directly, go on the name. So you will see 8 veneers getting inserted. You can add more, or you can have, say, only 6. Or if I want to go to the triangular shape, I will click on these veneers, right? So these are the basic shapes, and of course you can change the shapes as needed. So for now, let me have a triangular shape of veneers for this patient. I click insert. Now herein, I will do a gross positioning of my veneers. As you can see with instant smiles, there was a very quick motivational mock-up. But now you are getting into a little more detailed planning, which you can even communicate with your lab. So as you can see, as I'm moving these templates, it is showing me the height width proportions there. I'm not going to go into the details of aesthetic planning here, but I'm just trying to show you the different functionality aspect of the software. So I have done a gross positioning there. I can then click on individual veneers, or I can select all by right clicking. So if you want to reshape them, you can right click and reshape. You want to make the veneers a little more triangular, little more oval, you can definitely do that as well. Same principles of adding points as for smile area. Left click will add a point, right click will delete a point. You can of course go ahead and do a detailed planning. You can check all these planning tools in the planning window, where you can check the height width ratios, the proportion rectangles. Again, we will have a separate discussion on detailed DSD planning. Today, we will be covering the basic aspects of the software of how to design veneers. Of course, these planning tools are available as small tutorial videos on the software screen as well. So for now, this is the outline of the veneers that we want. I will go ahead and press apply. Now, the moment you press apply, there is some basic color which gets sort of impregnated in these veneers. You can go to the texture screen and add different textures. There are different ways of adding texture. One is using an automated texture, that is texture library. So this will fill in some texture. Let us see texture library number 2, texture library number 3. I like this texture for this patient. You can even add a gum layer if you want to. If you want to hide the underlying gum, you can just add a gum layer. For now, I am good without the gum layer. Let us go to preview. And you see, that's a nice planning for 8 veneers for this patient. Of course, you can go ahead and adjust the shade as we did for instant smiles. If I reduce the whiteness, it makes it a little yellow. If I increase the whiteness, it makes it a little white. I can increase the brightness a bit. You can add some shadow for realistic effects. And lip smoothness, I would always like to keep it high. And as for instant smiles, I would like to keep the opacity slightly less so that it blends in well. So a nice simulation for the patient to visualize. So this is a slightly more detailed planning, which can even be shared with the lab. Precise planning, also planning needed for 2D to 3D integration, which we will discuss whenever there is a webinar for DTS 3D. Right? That is one way of adding texture to the veneers. There is one alternate way of adding texture to the veneers, where you can use the patient's own tooth shade. Or if there are cases where you just have to plan, say, 2 veneers or 4 veneers, where you cannot use the library because the library will change the entire shape and then it is difficult to match them with the rest of the teeth. In that case, I can use self texture, that is the patient's own teeth. When you press on self texture here, the patient's own tooth photograph comes in. What I'm doing here is I'm just left clicking on the veneer, and on the right hand side, I will just click and make a selection like that, just the way you did for your rectangular tool, and press apply. So what it has done is, as you can see on this veneer, the patient's right central incisor, it has picked up texture from the patient's own central incisor and applied it over there. I can also press apply all, but then it doesn't look too artistic or realistic aesthetic because then it puts the same color in all the teeth. Whenever you want to use the patient's own tooth texture, it is always better to do it tooth by tooth. So then I go to the lateral incisor and I want to put texture from the patient's lateral. Canine, Try to cover the maximum part of the tooth structure. As you can see, the canine looks too yellow, so I would even want to fill in texture from the lateral. For premolar, I can stick to the same texture. Same on the other side. I go to the centrals, pick up texture, press apply. For the lateral, I do it for the lateral. Apply. Canine, I would like to stick to the texture from the lateral because again the canine is slightly yellow, and for the premolar also I am good with this texture. So this is a texture where we have filled in color from the patient's own teeth. Again, you can adjust the brightness contrast. I would like to slightly reduce the brightness here, make it a little more natural. And I always love to reduce the opacity. So you can have multiple texture options whenever you plan veneers. You can do the same thing for your lower teeth as well, right? So that has covered most of the features of the basic features of the software, that is the smile editing tools, veneer screen, and the instant smiles. Of course, we can go into a little more details with the tutorials available on the software. That is about it for today's session. I am open to any questions for the next 5 minutes and then we shall call it a day. Right? So the 2D planning that has been done here can also be shared with the lab. Whatever planning you have done, this can be shared with the lab so that whatever you have shown to the patient can be replicated in 3D as well. So whenever you want to do a 2D to 3D planning, you need to have this 2D design and communicate it to the lab. Either design on your own using the DTS 3D software, or you can send it to the lab where they can merge the photographs and intraoral scans and do the 2D to 3D treatment planning. Right? So that was about it for today. I'm open to any questions. You may just text me or you can just put on your microphones and we can have a one-on-one discussion. Meanwhile, thank you so much for your time. And I hope you continue using the DTS Pro software. We are continuously upgrading the software every 2 to 3 months. As with the DTS 3D software, the entire aim is to keep on making the software more and more automated so that the results are fast, realistic, and pretty accurate. We hope within this year to also launch our iPad version. So certain features, simple features, we should be able to do it on touch iPads as well.
Very well thought, I think, to be able to do these adjustments, especially that resource that you can, like lengthen the teeth and you can adjust the gums. It's very, very useful. So my question is only like, I'm glad and I'm very well satisfied with everything you have in this software. I just have one question about the instant smiles, because sometimes when I do the simulations for my patients, I feel like when I do the instant smiles and I like one certain type of smile, sometimes the curve is not like when you did your instant smile here. I saw that sometimes the curve doesn't align so well with the patient current teeth. So I just wish we had the way, yes, like this, you see, like the centrals, they are well matched. Like even if you push that to the canines, like the posterior teeth are like more up than his current teeth. You see
yes, I understand your question.
You understand me, right? So I just wish there was a way for me to align the posteriors to the simulation. No, because I feel like I know this is only something that we show the patients just so they can have an idea, but I just wish we could adjust this curve, like to make it even more realistic.
I understand your point very well taken. A little problem here is because these are direct images which we are putting on patients. So it is more like an image warping or image repositioning that will be needed. So in a context, when you are planning veneers, you can definitely change that because every tooth is separate here, right? I can, what you mean is something like this, right? So you can change the curves. Now, you can
Yes.
definitely do it when you are planning veneers,
Mhm.
but to do the same thing in instant smiles, uh, I'm sorry, there's a little thing here, it got changed, is not absolutely impossible to do, but yes, definitely something which we will put it in our mind and see if we can carry out in some of our upgrades.
Yeah, and I know that the point of the instant smile is to keep it simple, not to, to have to do a lot of adjustments. But I like it, the module you thought you teach about the veneers and crowns, the custom one, not the instant one,
Yeah,
the one you were before, because now it's more clear to me. I confess I had some issues before trying to create the smiles like with myself, like the ones that I draw. But now that you teach this, I think it's very useful. Like I can do it myself now. Before I couldn't, I think.
sure. Thank you
But
so much. And we will definitely see if we can carry up this point in updates where you are able to change the curve of the instant smiles as well. So keep the position of the front teeth more or less similar, and we can change the position of the back teeth. We will
thank you
try
so
our
much.
best to get that in some of the upgrades.
Thank you for this seminar. It was
Yeah.
really beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. If there are any questions, you can definitely email it to us on our website as well. That's support@dentaltreatmentsimulation.com. Thank you so much for your time and happy weekend ahead. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank